Welcome everyone. I'm Amy Landry with Portland Buy Local. I'm the board president, and we are here today to talk about search engine optimization, something that all of us need because now I think everyone has a website. If you don't have a website, you need a website in today's day and age. First, I want to just say thank you to two folks. One, Cloudport for hosting us here today, and Gorham Savings Bank, who has sponsored all of these series. This is the third in the series called IndieBiz EDU, where we discuss topics that are near and dear to the hearts of our small local businesses here in the Portland area. So today I have two SEO experts, also from two locally owned businesses, and I will just leave it to them to introduce themselves.
I'm Ian Garcia Grant. I am the content and SEO director at Local Image Co. in South Portland.
My name is Nathan O'Leary. I own Mainely SEO. We're also a local small business here in the Old Port, working with small businesses of all sizes to enhance their online presence.
Excellent. And just a few housekeeping for those online. We will be taking questions from the audience about halfway through the session, so feel free to put them in the chat whenever you like, and we will get to them at that time. All right. So to start it off, I always ask our guests, what is the last locally owned independent business that you visited, and why do you love them?
Yeah, so on my way in, I stopped at my favorite local coffee place, Time and Tide in Biddeford, and I love that they do everything locally. You know, they roast locally, they have their local brew shop, and they run their mail order business out of that location. So,
awesome. Mine would be Burke's Perks up in Monument Square. I stop by every day for a breakfast sandwich.
Excellent. All right, so now to the hard stuff. Elevator speech. What is SEO?
Yeah, so SEO is kind of a black box for most people. They just hear the term SEO and they don't really know what it is. In really basic terms, it's how much search engines trust your website, how much they think it's providing valuable information for users, and therefore it affects how high you are in their rankings and how high of a priority they put on your website over your competitors. Kind of a 1,000-mile overview.
Yeah, so search engine optimization is essentially implementing tools and techniques to your website using various keywords that'll eventually give Google a good ranking signal, or Bing in this case. Very few people use Bing, but get you found in the search results to essentially like market your business organically for when people are searching for your products and services. So it's more of like an inbound method than buying like radio or TV ads or print ads, because these people are actively looking for your products and services, and then you appear in those search results. You try to get them to your site and then hopefully convert them to take an action, whatever that is, on your site.
So it's important because if I'm not using it, I might not be found.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've found that the older the business in Maine, we have a lot of family-run older businesses that just aren't utilizing it. We talked about like why you definitely need a website. If you have a website and no one's going to it, then there's really no purpose. That SEO is going to get people to your website. And these older businesses are now losing out to market share to like new, more innovative businesses that are utilizing these. So if before they were the only paving company in town and they just earned all their business word of mouth, and now this new business in the last 5 years has shown up and they're getting all the business because they're being found online, which is where people would be going looking for, general contractors, jewelry companies, hair salons, whatever it may be.
That kind of brings up a really good thing to point out, is that there's a big difference between branded and non-branded traffic that you're getting through search engines. So if someone is searching for your company's name, it really just means that you have a good brand and that people know you. That's the word of mouth thing. Mm-hmm. That's earned, but it's not really what SEO is for. SEO is for that non-branded kind of organic discoverability. So if people are searching for things that you do without knowing who you are or that you even exist, they can still find you and they still end up on your website.
Yeah.
So let's say I don't have a website, or I'm a new business, right? Let's give you a benefit of the doubt. I'm a new business, or I'm just developing my marketing plan. What are the foundational pieces I need to have in place before I even think about SEO?
So, I mean, the very first thing, if you're at the very beginning, think really hard about your name as a business. Like, that's kind of the most fundamental thing to keep in mind. If it's hard to spell, if it's weird, if it doesn't have your service in the name, it can make SEO a lot more difficult. On the other hand, if you're named Southern Maine Contractors, anytime somebody searches for Southern Maine Contractors, you're going to automatically benefit from that, right? So that's like the very first thing you can do. But even before you implement a website, there are things you can do to start establishing your business online. Google Business Profile is probably the best example of that. If you have a really well fleshed out Google Business Profile, you're active on it, you have reviews, that'll drive business to you even before you have a website. And it is a big benefit for local SEO, which is usually the main concern for local businesses. Similar in that vein, joining organizations like your local chamber. They will provide you backlinks once you do have a website.
Or Portland by Local.
Of course, Portland by Local. It's a great example.
Portland by Local.
And exactly, you don't want to have just one. You want to, Better Business Bureau is another good example. But they will provide you backlinks once you do have a website. Even before that, they provide extra credibility. They provide another way for people to find you. And that's kind of maybe the most fundamental thing you can do before you even really get started.
So I like to break SEO into like two different buckets. One is on-page SEO, which really revolves around the keywords that, those non-brand keywords that you're trying to rank for. And then off-page SEO. The on-page SEO is all of the changes and the modifications that you can make to your website. So putting those keywords in various places is important, like the title, the meta tag, throughout the copy on the website, as a header tag, as an alt image tag on various pages. And then Google will understand what your business is about. If you don't have a name that explains exactly what you do, like Southern Maine Contracting, and you're another business like Cloudport, for example, that doesn't speak to co-working space maybe. And so, the name's like probably Cloudport Co-working, how they would put it online so that you do get that keyword in there. But my point is that no one's searching Cloudport that doesn't already know who they are.
Exactly.
And so by putting like Cloudport in the title of your website, you're not doing yourself any favors because Google's already going to show you for those searches. So you'd want to put co-working space, shared office space, floating desk, and those are keywords that you can use different tools online to find which ones are most popular, and then you want to use those in your website. And I think your question was about kind of when you're first launching your website, what sort of foundational things you want to do. So establishing what your top keywords are, and then using those sort of in your navigational elements and throughout like the hierarchy of the content that will be on your website is really going to help Google when they crawl your website, which means that they send a little spider bot to your site to scan for all the words and the changes. They'll see that and then start to show you for those particular searches. And then the Google My Business being like probably the second most important thing to get found on Google Maps. And then try to get reviews and optimize it with categories and photos and all sorts of things.
So keywords, this I'm going to skip down to a question I have a little further down, but how do I figure out what keywords to use? I know that there's services, there's like apps that you can use. Are those helpful?
Mm-hmm.
How do I go about figuring out what I should be using?
Yeah, so there's two different tools that I like to use. One's called SpyFu, SPYFU.com, and then another is called Uber Suggest. And those two tools, they have free options, so you don't have to pay. Google has their own, but it's kind of behind their AdWords program. But you can put in what you think those keywords are, and it'll spit back related keywords, and then you can see which ones have higher search volume and difficulty, which is also important. You kind of need to find a balance between those two, because if there's 100 co-working spaces in New York City, and you're a brand new co-working space, you're not necessarily going to rank number one or even on the first page right away. It's a long-term process.
Yeah, so I agree with all that, but so the Google tool that Nate just kind of mentioned is Google Keyword Planner. It is definitely focused on AdWords, but it does show you things like the amount of traffic that you're getting, seasonal trends. That's really important for a lot of Maine businesses in particular, just with the seasonality of the state. So having access to that kind of raw and unrefined data from Google can be really helpful, just to like see what kinds of keywords you want to go for. Another thing you can do is look at what your competitors are doing. There are a lot of really good paid tools for this. There are some free tools that are okay. One that I think is pretty standard in the industry is SEMrush. Another one is Ahrefs. They'll really let you know what competitors are ranking for, how much traffic they're actually getting from them, how many people are searching for them, how they rank for them, and you can see what they're doing that's working, what they're doing that isn't working, and just kind of go after what we call the low-hanging fruit. So keywords where there's less competition and enough traffic to be worth it. In a small market like Maine, especially if you're a local business, sometimes those keywords might get searched 50, 100, 200, 500 times, whereas in a really large metropolitan area, you would ignore those. In Maine, those can actually really matter just because there's such a different population density here.
All right, so everybody, you have something to add?
Well, just one last thing about keywords.
Sure.
I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it again, but the keyword near me at the end of any sort of search phrase is probably very important to include in your keywords.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's somebody taking a specific action that's looking for your products and services near them in the moment, then that usually leads to somebody actually taking action and buying a product or visiting a store or whatever.
And
So I'd actually write near me in my content.
And also, so the other piece of that though is having a strong Google business profile, because then Google intelligently knows where you're physically located. And you can also have geographic tags within your content. So we serve Portland, Westbrook, South Portland, for example. Having those tags will Google can pretty intelligently discern that is near whoever's searching.
And that's kind of what my next question was. So if that answers it, great. If not, if there's other things, but it's I'm a small business that primarily sells to local people. I don't need to reach the people in California. Right? They're not going to bring their bike to Gorham Bike and Ski to get it fixed. They're going to go somewhere near them. So what else can I do to reach that local audience through SEO?
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. So one thing to keep in mind with SEO is that it's sort of a machine that feeds itself. So if you can find ways to get initial traffic, it will continue to improve your overall domain authority because you're getting traffic, so Google knows you're good, so you get more traffic. So getting that started in some way, whether on local social media groups, for example, Facebook pages for a long time were really helpful for that. Or again, having memberships with and partnerships with organizations like Portland Buy Local or your Chamber of Commerce, to get that initial traffic and let Google know that it's a real website. You'd be surprised how many websites out there are just a list of links. That's really helpful to get started and just building that basic domain authority that lets you be competitive.
Yeah, so for a local business that's serving local customers, two tools that we use, one's called Moz Local, another one's called Yext, Y-E-X-T. You can put your business name and address and phone number into these tools, and then it will scan the internet for your information to see if it's accurate and if it's all congruent. It's really important that if you decide that your name is Cloudport Co-working, that you use that same name everywhere online, as well as like the spelling of the address, like street, or are you going to abbreviate it, as well as like if there's like a box number or a suite or floor, and then having that name and address and phone number the same everywhere online. And those tools not only will scan the internet for your information, it'll tell you which ones you might not even be on, and then you can either use their tool and pay for it, or you can usually register yourself on those sites. There's probably 60 plus online directories that you really want to be listed in. There's ones that you've probably never even heard of, like Hot Frog and Yellowbot and things like that. But those listings is going to give another indication to Google that you're an established business at this address. Your hours are there, photos, a keyword-rich description of your business that you want to submit to all these directories. And then those backlinks being featured on those directories is going to give another signal to Google that you're trustworthy and established.
Yeah, something you just mentioned there that's really important is that consistency and accuracy of information. And this is actually gets into one of the things that is kind of a pet peeve of mine. So small businesses that buy a lot of backlinks, often they don't have that context. They don't have that information. It's not very accurate. It's a link on a page that no one really looks at, and there's no backing up context. So in those situations, those kinds of backlinks actually don't provide much value typically, even if it's from a relatively high authority website, just because Google knows, well, they're not actually talking about this. This is just a link, right? So having that accurate context, making sure it matches up, lets Google know that it's not just a random link, it's an intentional link to your business. They know you, they know about you, and it's very intentional and it's very clear.
I just have a funny story related to that. JCPenney back in the day bought links, and they had backlinks on like some Costa Rican travel blog, and it said like buy curtains, and it linked to their like curtains page. Well, Google saw all this, knew that they were manipulating their rankings, and then like delisted them from Google. And that was kind of the demise, I think, of JCPenney.
Now they're gone.
Because they lost millions of dollars, and it was right around the holidays that they literally were not found in Google.
Yep.
And it cost them like millions and millions of dollars. So if you buy links, like Google can like identify that sort of stuff. You really want them to be organic and authentic and everything.
All right, so SEO sounds really hard. Why don't I just buy search ads?
Maybe you should, but I
want you to argue against that, or at least as a complementary strategy.
Realistically, your digital marketing shouldn't be all your eggs in one basket, right? So a healthy digital marketing plan is probably going to include ads, but SEO is actually very complementary with search ads. So the better you rank organically for a keyword, the less it costs you to have an ad for that keyword. So say you're ranking, on page 1, but you're like maybe in position 10. You're at the very bottom. You're not getting a lot of organic traffic, but Google does trust you with that. Like they are putting you on page 1. You do have some clout, so to speak. That actually reduces how much it costs for you to get a click from an ad. So in many ways, it's not like either or. It's making sure that you're on the same page with your ads and your SEO, because if they're working together and things where you're ranking okay but not amazing, you're using ads to fill in the gap, you can actually get a lot more for your buck.
Yeah, the ads are really important to help you try to find those sort of really profitable keywords for your business. Because SEO takes like 3 to 6 to maybe even 9 months, you can kind of give yourself a jump start on your most important and profitable keywords by testing the water and sort of running ads first to see how that traffic's going to behave on your website. And so if you can get a few hundred people to your site and try to estimate what your sort of conversion rate is for different keywords, then you're going to know which ones you should spend the time over the next like couple years really investing in the SEO. And that has a much longer term effect on your return on investment and stuff. So we like to start a lot of the times with AdWords because the SEO takes a while, and then sometimes there's a shift once those rankings start to come up organically. But then you do kind of just want to run both of them because you take up more voice on the page. You're shown twice, which just kind of mentally, if someone's searching for something and they see your name a few times in the search results, they're like, well, if Google likes them, then I will probably want to hire them, sort of mentality.
Yeah. And it's definitely worth noting, you have to keep paying for clicks through ads, right? And the SEO just keeps on giving, right? So,
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this a little bit a question ago about what not to do. So black hat SEO, which I didn't know was a thing. So there's black hat and white hat SEO. So what are those, like, don't do this type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. Like if you're trying to spend money to improve your rankings by buying keywords, or even if you don't know it, but you've hired some foreign overseas company from India that just promises you #1 rankings for like $200 a month, like don't do it, obviously.
yeah.
And we've all like gotten hundreds and thousands of those sort of emails and stuff. Don't like overuse keywords. Don't like stuff them into your site. Back in the day, it was like white text with a white background so that the words were there, but like the user didn't necessarily see them. Try to avoid stuff like that. The injection of code into like hacking things so that you can create backlinks that way, or there's a lot of different ways but you kind of know when you're doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. If you're being authentic and honest and you're trying to grow your SEO organically, you won't accidentally do something black hat, right?
Unless you unknowingly hire somebody.
Well, no, totally. But yeah, I think probably the most common thing is buying backlinks, buying them in bulk. That it's a huge red flag for Google, and while it might improve your results a little bit in the short term, it's really destroying your chances in the long run.
I'd also like to just add, because another sort of black hat method is to negatively SEO impact a competitor.
Right.
So if you think about it, I could buy backlinks to a competitor's website in hopes that they're going to get removed from the search results, and then they're frantically trying to figure out why. If you're monitoring sort of your backlinks with some of these various tools, a free one would be like the Google Search Console or the Google Webmaster Tools. They changed the name. But you can monitor your backlinks and see like what new ones are popping up. And there's a way within that tool to submit what's called a disavow list of links. So if you notice, like even if it's not happening to you like in a nefarious way, but your content could get picked up and spread across like hundreds of other like websites that are just like scraping content and repurposing it. You don't want to be affiliated or associated with those sort of neighborhoods online. So you can tell Google like, here's 100 backlinks that like don't count against me, or remove them from your backlink profile. It's a little more advanced, but if you're dealing with a large business that is reliant on their traffic from SEO, it's something you really need to like be looking at.
Yeah.
And monitoring.
So the specific term usually is toxicity. So how toxic a backlink is.
Gambling sites and money sites
there's,
like
there's
that.
a whole kind of range of toxicity, right? Like, so Google will automatically determine, with their algorithm if a backlink was probably purchased, and they'll note it as like a money link, for example, and that's considered quite toxic. And so those are when you're getting backlinked on pages that seem suspiciously specifically designed to be a backlink page for you, or it's just a page of links, right? And that's pretty common.
Yeah.
So what's the easiest way to get started on my own? So I'm a small local business. I have 3 employees, or I have no employees. Like, how do I start this without reaching out to a professional? And then when should I reach out to a professional?
So probably the best way to start out as a small business trying to do a website for the first time is one.
Or improving my website, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Do some research. So there are a ton of free resources out there. They're a Google search away. They're dense. They're difficult. YouTube videos can be helpful. But the way most people learn to do SEO is they will know that they need it. They will start Googling. They'll find things that are confusing, and they just start Googling the individual jargon terms until it starts to make sense. It can take a lot of time and energy, and you're probably not going to get the same results that someone with years of experience can get you. But it's a good place to start. Also, a lot of the tools that we use all the time have free trials available. So SEMrush, for example, you can use, I think, for free for either a month or a week.
What was it again?
SEMrush.
SEMrush. Okay.
But the same applies for Ahrefs or like any number of paid tools. Most of them have some kind of free trial. You can do your initial research and get a pretty good start on keywords that you can use. Unfortunately, it doesn't stay fresh, right? So SEO is changing all the time. Google updates their algorithm. What people are specifically searching for changes just kind of naturally over time. That can be affected a lot by the news cycle. It can be affected a lot by national level advertisement and just kind of the changes in zeitgeist. But generally, you do end up needing to refresh your keywords at least annually for most industries, just to make sure that they work. But those free trials are a huge asset for small business owners because you usually have a little bit more time than money. And you definitely need either time or a good bit of money in order to take a good stab at SEO.
Yeah, so just getting started, I think the simplest thing is to just like brainstorm keywords that would relate to your business, put them in a spreadsheet, send that to friends and family and ask them what kind of questions they might be searching for to look for your products and services, and use these free tools to try to just like verify that information. You can usually export those keywords with like the difficulty and the search volume, and then implement those into your site just in the website copy, as we mentioned in the title tag, the meta description, just like various places. If you're using like WordPress, there's plugins like the Yoast SEO plugin that'll sort of check all these locations to see if you've used the keyword in the right place. It is a computer bot, so it's never 100% accurate, but it'll give you like a good guideline. And then from there, definitely like submit your information to as many of those local businesses, starting with Google My Business, and try to get reviews. That's another great way to just kickstart your SEO, if you will, online. Trying to get reviews, like primarily on Google My Business. So that's kind of like a first start there. I also it's really important to measure your results. So using Google Analytics, which is another free tool, and just put that code in your site, and then you'll get a sense of how are people behaving when they get to your website. You can look at the bounce rate for different traffic sources. There used to be a lot of more keyword data in there. You kind of have to connect it to that Google Search Console that we were talking about before to like import sort of your impressions and things like that. But monitoring and measuring all that stuff's important to know if it's working or not.
And not only for that, but to see where it's working a little bit, and you could push a little harder to then get a lot more. And that's usually the kind of the easiest. Again, like low hanging fruit is I'm doing okay here. I want to do great here. Finding those opportunities is really helpful.
Yeah.
So we were talking a lot about Google, but there are other search engines. I mean, so like for instance, I use DuckDuckGo because I'm hoping I'm not going to get targeted so much with ads if I do that.
But you do that on your phone?
Both.
Yeah, because then
both.
They already have it.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. It makes me feel better. I don't know. But are these SEO practices, I mean, are they pretty consistent across search engines? I know I care mostly about Google, but like, am I going to do this? Does that help me with all the others?
You really only need to worry about Google.
Yeah, so Google sets the rules because they're the big guy on the playground. So everyone else just kind of follows their lead anyway. So if you're following the best practices for Google, you're just straight up following the best practices.
Great. So we're halfway through, so I thought I'd stop asking my questions and see if we have questions from the audience. We'll take questions from the live audience first. Anyone? Right over here? If you can wait and speak into the mic so that our folks online can hear you.
Thank you. You mentioned on-page SEO, but I didn't catch what off-page was all about.
Yes, sorry. The local SEO and submitting your information to all those third-party directories as a local business, again, if you have like a physical address, is an off-page SEO tactic because all of those other sites are going to link back to your website. So the off-page is all of the things that happen on other parts of the internet that will affect your website if they link back to you. It's really all kind of revolves around links as being like the currency online and trying to get more of those from trusted sources and not buying them essentially.
Yeah. I think the really quick thing to say is on page is what you can do on your website, and off page is just what you cannot directly control in that way. And you can create these listings, you can be on these platforms, but you can't control who's going to decide to link back to you just organically.
Okay, so if the SEO is all directed to the website, I know there's a lot of other connections, like through my phone. I get contacted through my phone. People find me through Siri, and I don't know, is SEO connected to all these other things as well?
Yeah. So one of the best examples for that, I think, are the automatically generated questions that show up on the Google search page, right? So if you ask a question, they'll have related questions, and they'll have little snippets. Part of that is based on the on-page schema, making sure that it's clear that you have kind of like an FAQ section, for example, or just making sure that it's formatted in a way where Google understands that it's a question and answer that you're providing. And that kind of data gets picked up by a lot of these AI assistants like Siri, just because it's indexed in that way. So it really kind of starts with the SEO because that determines how the information on your website is indexed, and it determines what tags, keywords, services, et cetera, are being kind of ascribed to your website, and that's the bulk of how those other systems find you anyway.
Yeah, so just to add to that, just those frequently asked questions are really important to have a page on your website that's sort of dedicated to those, because those are going to help you not only just like convert more people that are visiting your site that might not otherwise because they have a question that you haven't answered on your site. So those pages are really valuable. And then like he said, those search bots will kind of use those questions and answers if somebody asks that similar question to Alexa or any of the other bots or whatever are out there. So.
All right. The question from online is, where do you put the keywords in on the back end of your website?
On the back end? So really, most of the on-page SEO goes on the front end, what people see. As for the back end, I mean, you have, as you've mentioned a few times, you have the SEO title, essentially, the meta description of the page. You need to have it there. You need to have it in alt tags for your images. Just essentially, that's an accessibility feature. So if somebody is sight impaired, they can understand what images are conveying on a page. At least that's how it started. Now it's used a lot for SEO with keywords. There are little things like that you can do that's really not immediately visible, but for the most part, you want to make sure that your keywords are just in the content people are reading. So it'd be, in the title of the page, it'd be, in any, not all of them, but at least one or two of the subheaders on a page, if possible. Include it one or two times in the body of text, just so that it's on there enough that it's really clear that that's what the content is about. And generally make sure that if you're making a page going for a specific keyword, this is really common with blogs, for example, that the entire page is kind of about that concept. The more focused it is, the higher a priority it will be assigned for that keyword because it's more clearly about that specific thing people are searching for.
Yeah, so that goes back to a question I'd asked this gentleman yesterday. It was about meta tags. For those of us that are over the age of 40, we were taught SEO that you could put a lot of stuff in the back end. You could put all of these things in meta tags so that you didn't have to put them all in your content. And it sounds like that's not something you can do today.
I mean, you can put as much as you want in meta tags theoretically. But if it isn't reflected in that front end content, Google will either mostly ignore it or it'll even ding you for trying to rank for keywords that you really don't have the content to support. The primary goal of Google is to serve people information that they'll find useful. So if you aren't providing useful information that people are actually looking for when they search for the keyword, ultimately that's going to negatively influence your performance in the very long run and in the short run.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great summary. I would just add to going back to like having keywords on a page that aren't necessarily associated with that page. You know, your home page should be a general overview of your products and services. You're not going to get your home page to necessarily rank for every keyword that you want to rank for. So a great example I like to use that we've implemented for landscape companies in the past is, you know, they're offering like services in all 4 seasons that are usually very different. And so you can't necessarily get your homepage to rank for like plowing and lawn care because they're kind of looked at differently. So having that sort of services page, but within that services page, having subpages of, you know, winter, summer, and spring, but then the fall cleanup, the summer cleanup, the like, you know, dethatching, the like plowing, like having a page now for every one of those services is going to help you rank higher for a much broader set of keywords because you've optimized your site with your, again, menu structure and hierarchy to like drill down and get more specific. And so that's like a good strategy for any business that offers like a wide range of services that aren't necessarily easily found with like one keyword, because you're never going to get one page on your site to rank. So the more pages of content you have, the higher quality of content for each one of those things. You don't want to just like repurpose the same thing and say like, we do lawn care, we do plowing, and like, you know, there's a lot of other keywords that, you know, build out the content on that page essentially.
So from an SEO standpoint, so I was literally just having this conversation with my husband yesterday about design of websites and talking about, oh, well, you know, a lot of people were looking at our websites here, and shouldn't we just have almost all of our content on the homepage so we can just scroll. But from an SEO standpoint, that's not a good idea.
You can do both. You could tease everything on your homepage, but then have them drill in to learn more, to go to a dedicated page about condos, about waterfront, about lakefront, because those are all different keywords that a different user is looking for.
Yeah, so just generally, the more focused a page is, the better it's going to rank for what it focuses on. But what you run into a lot is that small business owners look at some of these like really high-level national companies that have, you know, gorgeous but like almost wordless websites. I think of Apple as like this really like design-heavy, beautiful branded website that is like, oh, if they can do that, why
they don't
can't
need SEO.
Well, exactly, and that's what it comes down to, is when you have this huge brand, or you have such a head start on domain authority, it almost doesn't matter what you put on your website to a degree. You can still get traffic, but with small businesses, we're always fighting against them, right? And so we have to make sure that we're kind of working twice, 3 times, 4 times as hard as they are at the SEO in order to get even remotely comparable results.
More questions from the audience?
My website says that I have built-in SEO through BigCommerce. What does that mean?
They're probably taking like the information you've already put into your site, and maybe in terms of products, and is using like maybe the product title as like the title of the page, or they're just kind of maybe even giving you the option in the back end to put that information in there. So when they say it's built in, it's not like built in, because you actually have to put stuff in there.
Yeah. So, so for example, with WordPress, there are plugins that will like create default SEO titles for pages. Just in that same vein, it's what you name the page plus the name of your business typically. And those are kind of crap, unfortunately. Like they're better than nothing, but they're only one step above that, because it's not optimized. It's getting your foot in the door, essentially.
It's better than having your title tag say home.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else from the audience here? Moment, John. Yeah.
I got a question. What would be your thoughts for, say, a business that's been limping along with the same low-cost entry-level website for a while. It is really now has an IT budget and is ready to sort of scale up. What are some good first steps, like who to reach out to, what to think about, and rough idea of what an annual amount we should be spending on SEO and things like that?
So you can literally spend as much as you want. That's
What's the industry? What's the industry or the business? Okay. More specifically? Okay.
We all know what your business is.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I forgot. You told us.
yeah. So it depends. Like if you're looking to do e-commerce specifically, that's almost a different animal from the kinds of websites you would do for like a service-based business. If you're trying to sell online with retail, then you're competing against things like Amazon, and they're kind of always going to win, at least in terms of like the top few spots, right? So finding other ways to get people to your website other than that kind of like brute force direct approach with SEO can be really helpful. And you're going to need a firm that's somewhat creative to achieve that. They're going to have to be flexible. There are firms that specialize in things like e-commerce, but there are also, not to local image. There are also a lot of firms that focus on things like, local businesses and local SEO. There are a lot of businesses that focus on, all kinds of SEO. In terms of budget, across the board with small businesses, generally it's recommended that about 15% of revenue goes towards marketing of some kind. As that, how that split works between, conventional, traditional media and marketing and website really depends on how much you can get out of your website. You want to really look at the ROI and the potential for making money from the website. So I'd love to sit down with you and answer that in like more specific detail, but unfortunately, it kind of comes down to it depends.
Yeah.
In your business too.
Yeah, and your goals, ultimately. That's kind of what it comes down to. Like, do you want to drive more people into the store? And then, there's ways to do that, obviously, online with SEO, the local SEO, obviously with social media and ads and things like that. And then, or do you want to, like, build out the online presence with, like, an online store or, some sort of a subscription model to something? It's just, there's a lot of different ways to kind of go about that and figure it out. And then that'll really dictate the price. What's going to go to like creating content and SEO and developing these like relationships online to gather and earn those backlinks and those mentions. And then, social media is a big component of that, being local. And, the number one ROI driver is like email marketing for most small businesses. So growing that email list and staying in touch with, those customers that might not be on social media every day, but you've got their email so you can talk to them that way. A lot of that. So it does depend.
Yeah.
I mean, you both have clients that are doing this regularly. I mean, will you throw out some kind of average number, that the average local small business might be spending now?
Yeah. So
Just on SEO, not all the ancillaries.
I'd say anywhere from maybe 500 to 1,500, really depending on who you're competing with, what your goals are.
Or monthly.
Monthly,
Yep.
yeah. It really depends on, again, like what your goals are, right? Like if you're trying to compete with regional level businesses, you're trying to compete with national level businesses or even international, it can take kind of a lot. Like I said, you're working 3, 4, 5 times as hard as these much more established businesses to get comparable results. So that can get very expensive. Like the very high end, I would say, for a small to medium business that's trying to do really well locally or regionally, would probably be closer to $5,000 a month. But I would say it's probably safe to say that even if you're just throwing like around $500 a month at the issue, you're going to see progress.
You work with a lot of businesses that are like national, right?
Yeah, well, it's a combination
Yeah.
of local and national businesses, or they're trying to attract the national attention if it's, that they're selling their products.
Do you see a similar
online.
cost?
It really depends, like what, again, your goals are and trying to get out of it. I mean, we like to take a holistic approach of like utilizing a bunch of different services. So we, wouldn't necessarily say like you have to just do this for SEO. It's like kind of like a whole package, but $1,000 to $2,000 a month for a whole host of different services isn't too far out of the ordinary,
Okay. Let's move to the online audience. I'm sure we have a lot of questions there. 4 questions. Okay. Yeah, let's answer some of those.
The first one that I want to say, because I think it's important, is how important is it for SEO to have a blog and regularly update it with content?
So that it does depend on your goals. So if you're trying to rank for, say you have 20 keywords that you know are going to drive you business, and you just don't have the bandwidth to create a website with 20 core pages where they're dedicated to each of these keywords, a blog is an incredibly useful way to build out the keyword footprint of your website over time. It's less resource intensive than that, like getting it all done in that initial push. And also, Google will appreciate that you're adding new content and updating your website. The more current it is, the more current it is. So if you're putting out a blog a month even, that's showing that you're actively paying attention to your website. It's not abandoned. The business is definitely active. Just generating that content alone is helpful in that way. But also, a well-constructed blog can be extremely helpful for going after specific keywords. And there are entire blogging strategies around, or SEO strategies, I should say, around creating sort of intralinked blogs where you'll go after, like, say, 5 related keywords. And then you can create sort of like a master blog, for example, that is also going after like all of that, and it has all of that content in one place. So it's a very authoritative article, but it's also intralinked and feeding to these more specialized articles that are about the specific subsections of that larger article. So like a blog can be very central and very important to your SEO strategy. I wouldn't say it's essential. It depends on what you're trying to do and what you're going for. But it's probably one of the best bang for the buck approaches to SEO, I would say.
Yeah, just bare minimum, if you can, 1 a month, ideally 1 a week. That's going to give you a lot of other content to repurpose in a newsletter, on social media. So it doesn't necessarily just live on your site as like a blog that you hope somebody will find. You can like push a lot of other traffic there. By feeding this Google spider food every single time it comes to your site, that's gonna make that spider really happy, and they'll come back more often.
That's our logo.
And then they'll rank your website even higher.
Okay.
So.
All right. Next question.
Yeah. Okay. This question says, I am a tour business. I have my business website, and I also use a booking site to list my tours and manage travelers who book. I was reading during my SEO research that I shouldn't have the exact same wording in different places online, as it can impact SEO negatively. Is this true? Can you speak to it? If yes, and how much do I need to change the wording if I need to describe a tour in more than one place in detail?
Nathan, you do
It's
a lot
great
of
question.
It might even be my
tour.
client. She's
Yeah.
testing me right now.
Like I feel like that's like directed at you.
So it kind of depends, and the only reason why I say that is because if the ticket process where your tours are listed and they're checking out online is embedded into your website,
Right.
then you don't necessarily need to have a different description in more than one place. It also just kind of goes back to like a product description, where the manufacturer usually gives all of its resellers the same description of the products. And you'll find that on like many sites that are drop shipping product or whatever. And you can even, I won't get into that, but you can like track to see like how that description ranks against like all the sites that are using the same description. And then ultimately it just kind of is, which site does Google trust more?
Right.
And the tour company might have a lot more backlinks and authority because they're getting linked to from hundreds of other tour companies that are selling their tickets. But if you can buy the tickets through your website, and you have good page authority and traffic, then Google's also smart enough to know that like the end goal and destination is to buy a ticket through this company. So if they see the same description, as long as it's not being used on like hundreds of other sites, it's not like you need to invest a ton of effort into it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is kind of like a complicated situation of like that sort of user experience and stuff. But
So what I would say is that it probably matters less in that specific instance than in others.
Yeah.
But in general, plagiarism is like, that's a no-no. You don't want to do that.
well, it sounds like this woman has, or if I don't know who it is, but this person has.
He knows who it is.
They're probably the tour company is
Right.
getting the description from them.
Right.
And they're just like listing it on there to like sell tickets.
And that's a very different situation than what you're probably reading about, which is where if you copy content from somewhere else, or if you have the same content, on, say you have 2 different websites, it's like 2 different brands you sell under. You want to make sure those are distinct, that those are different, that you aren't just reusing the content, because that will be flagged by Google as plagiarism, and that's a problem. But yeah, exactly. So like with certain e-commerce situations, reselling, that sort of situation, it might have some impact, but nothing like if you're talking about sort of these more general situations. So the general SEO advice isn't always applicable in the specific situation, essentially.
What we see often too is just like you might subscribe to a service that's going to supply you with blogs every single month. And, this is common in the real estate space.
We get asked.
And those
Every day.
are on thousands of other realtor
Yeah.
sites, and maybe just the town name has changed on every single one. That needs to be, not published on your site at all. It's going to negatively impact you.
Very low
Whoever published it first, Google knows that because their crawler went to that site and saw those words first. They're going to get the initial sort of best SEO value if they've got, an established site or whatever. But I would say it needs to be more than 50% rewritten if, you're trying to regurgitate like content that you're just buying or something.
Exactly.
So let's get to our next question. We have 2 here, and then for those in the audience, if we go over time, I'm sure these 2 gentlemen will stick around to answer your questions.
Does it matter if pages are organized with parent pages versus as independent pages, WordPress?
Yeah, you definitely want to create like a structure and a hierarchy to your content so that not only the user, but again, that Google spider can like crawl and find those pieces of content. If there's one page out there that's not necessarily being linked to by any sort of navigational elements or whatever, they can be considered like a doorway page where, it's letting people into your site, but you can't ever get back to that. So you want to kind of create that hierarchy of like top level, sub level, and then even like secondary and even like more bulleted, indented lists, if you will.
Yeah. So the piece that I want to like kind of echo and make like yell it from the rooftops. The user experience is super important. So if organizing your website in that way is going to make it easier to use, please do that. If you versus so I've seen something done before, and it's done all the time in mobile versions of websites where you have to click the thing, you have to go to the thing, you have to click again. You want to make sure that you don't have like this huge laundry list of categories that you can't even see the bottom of, like on a cell phone, for example. You want to make sure that a site is easily usable. Otherwise, it's going to skew your bounce rate, your traffic, and it's also just unfriendly to people. They don't want to do business with you. You want to make sure it's designed well.
Last question online?
Yep. Also, could you go into optimizing page titles? As someone who has been doing a lot of self-teaching, re-SEO, and website building, I recently learned about this and how the page title, URL, H1, and subheadings are most important place for keywords, and also how using HTML heading tags from H1 through H6 create a strong information hierarchy.
Sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Maybe they should be here.
Was there a question in there?
I think that it started as, could you go into optimizing page titles?
So the easy thing is, if you can, put the keyword you're trying to rank for first in the SEO title. That's a small thing you can do that's easy. And if you're trying to rank for more than one, like for a core page of your website, for example, you might have, keyword separator, keyword business name. If that fits, you don't want to go over Google's pixel limit essentially with SEO titles. So using things like a SERP optimizer tool might be helpful for this person, just to make sure that their SEO titles are conforming to the best practices for SEO titles on Google in general. The same goes for meta descriptions, and just for SEO titles, I would say definitely in order of priority, having the keywords that you want to rank for a page is really important.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes. Just wait for the mic, if you would.
I just had a follow-up to the blog question. Does it make a difference in how effective that blog is if it's not under your domain or being under your domain? Like if your website's domain, if the blog is not under that, like.
So do you mean a subdomain, or do you mean on like a third-party website?
Like a third-party website.
Okay, so those actually kind of do different things. So a blog on your website is increasing the keyword footprint of your website primarily. And it's also an opportunity for other blogs or websites to link to that blog for potential backlinks. With a third-party article, typically you're trying to generate a backlink to your website. So they're doing kind of different SEO tasks, essentially. So medium.com is a great example of like something that a lot of people use in that way. Those backlinks are often, just because those are typically on platforms that are designed for hosting blogs from other people, not as powerful as other guest blogging opportunities. And especially like doubly so if it only gives you a no-follow link. We didn't really get into that specifically, but follow link versus a no-follow link, there's a big difference in how much link juice that passes to your website, essentially. So I would say that they're kind of doing different tasks entirely.
Yeah, I would have it live on your root domain. You don't want it to be even like a subdomain, so it'd be gorhambikenski.com/blog as opposed to blog.gorhambikenski.
Yep.
And having it on like a third-party site, you're losing the ability to track if people are finding you through that, then end up making a sale because you're across two different domain names. I mean, there's obviously more technical ways to track that, but same thing with like remarketing and retargeting pixels, which I assume would be really big for you guys. If somebody's come in on a blog, you want to be able to drop that cookie on their computer to be able to follow them around and track them. And so you can't really do that if it's on like a medium.com or some other like self-hosted like, WordPress or Tumblr site or something.
So I think we're at time. So if are there any additional questions online? All right. So first off, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Gorham Savings Bank that sponsored this. And thank you all for coming, as well as Cloudport for hosting us today. If you are already a member of Portland by Local, thank you. If you're not already a member of Portland by Local, we would love to have you. We are right now offering all of these for free in hopes that you will join us or support us at some point. So portlandbylocal.org, you can find information about memberships as well as all of our upcoming events. We have a mixer at Fish and Bone on April 13th, and look for the next IndieBiz EDU. If you have suggestions for what you want to hear in these sessions, please shoot us an email or a DM on Instagram as well. And just before we go, I want you to, rapid fire, 30 seconds, number one tip for SEO, both of you.
Chat GPT. It wrote my whole presentation.
Yeah, he's not wrong. So I'd say SEO is changing all the time, but stick to the fundamentals, and it probably won't steer you wrong. As I think you mentioned earlier, if you're chasing the trends, the trends die out, and what's white hat today can be black hat tomorrow. So just make sure that you stick to the fundamentals and you build a great foundation.
All right. That's all for today. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone online.
Thanks.